guess what? Scott Touron, the Brewery Underground Podcast. Well, here we are again, right?
We're back. I'm not doing much
yeah.
of nothing. I'm not really doing nothing. What are you doing?
Yeah. What is this podcast episode today? Is it about nothing? Is that
Kind
what
of
we're
about
doing?
nothing. We really don't have any rhyme or reason to it. It's kind of the podcast about nothing.
We have crossed over the Brewery Underground Podcast today. We're just going to sit here and maybe we're going to hum like a giraffe or something. Is that what we're doing?
Maybe. We might riff a little bit. We could do that. Is that what a giraffe sound? Is that what giraffe hums? That's
Yeah, buddy. Well, you know what? And we got to bring in two guys because they do a podcast about nothing. Although I'm going to disagree because I think they do a podcast that's pretty damn good. It's Hop In, We're Drinking podcast with Joe Crockett and Nick Rotruck. Guys, welcome in. We love you. We've gotten to know you, and now we got you on our podcast, and we're very happy that you're here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We've been looking forward to this for a while, ever since you and Scott reached out to have us on, and we've been following you guys for a while. You've been a big inspiration in what we decided to start doing, and obviously we've all gotten to know each other pretty well outside of the podcast world. So been looking forward to having this little beer party tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, guys. Aloha. It's a beautiful day here in the islands, and I wish I could spread it all to you guys. But like Nick said, we appreciate all the help you guys gave us with the podcast. You answered technical questions. You put up with our nonsense. And I don't know how many beers we've had with you guys, and that helped too. But thanks for having us on.
Oh, Joe, why do you always have to rub it in everyone's face that you're sitting on an island?
I would.
You know what? I have this hashtag that I use, and it's hashtag my life is better than your vacation. So,
well, for people that don't know, this podcast today, man, we're spread out across America because Scott and I, we're in Nashville, Tennessee. Nick, you're in West Virginia, and Joe, as you haven't already guessed, he is all the way in Hawaii. Our first guest from Hawaii. Actually, our first guest.
Yeah. Woo woo. Paradise, baby. Paradise.
Aloha.
By
the way, this picture in front of me is very familiar. You talked about us hanging out before and doing happy hours. This is exactly what it looks like. Add a person or two more here and there, but this is very familiar to us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I think we've done this before. Yeah.
We have.
Absolutely.
We have, and you know what we also do on those happy hours? We're drinking beer. We do the same thing on a podcast, guys. Mm-hmm. We got the beer, and I have a beer that was in my refrigerator. We all do beer trades a lot and things like that. And I was going through my refrigerator the other day, and when people send us to basically the Brewery Underground Podcast, they send beer. A lot of times they send it to Scott first. So he disseminates, he gives it to me. I live about a half hour from him. And the other day I was asking him, I said, hey, is that the beer that I got from Nick and Ashley? And he said, yeah. I had 3 of them in my refrigerator. So, Nick, thank you. This is the Autumn Terra, the Ground Land Brewery IPA. So thank you, sir. Yeah.
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoy it. That's a good beer.
I probably will. What do you guys have drinking tonight?
Yeah, what do you guys got? Joe, what are you sipping on?
I've got, Nick and I, like I said, we've been talking a lot, and he keeps talking about WeldWorks. So I picked this up at our local bottle shop. It is Citra Extra Juicy Bits, a double dry hopped with Citra Mosaic and Eldorado.
I love, and we were just talking earlier, they're in Greeley, Colorado. I love that you can get that in Hawaii.
Yeah, that's one thing. We got a local bottle shop here called Village Beer Kapolei, and Tim and his crew somehow managed to bring in stuff that you literally cannot get anywhere else. And as soon as he posts on Instagram, we got this coming in, I'm like, babe, we're making a beer run.
Yeah, I love WeldWorks beer. I pick it up at our bottle shop in Virginia, so we even get it all the way out here. So I go to a place called the Beer and Wine Shop, and the guy that owns it, his name's Eric, gets some killer beers, and a lot of what I end up sending you guys, like Scott, those Trillium beers, that's where I get those at. So he brings in some of the hottest stuff.
Yeah, it's badass. Nick, what have you got there?
I've actually got a little taste of the island that Joe sent over to me. I got Shades for Days from Honekoa Brewing.
Woohoo!
Nice.
6% IPA, and then I got a couple on. Actually, I got one on deck, and now that I'm talking about it, I probably should have grabbed 2 or 3 more. But if I disappear in the middle, that's where I went.
Yeah, it's no problem. And I've learned with these things, especially with certain people, I bring a cooler up with me now, and I've got at least 4 in here because I've run out a couple of times, and I'm like, well, this sucks.
Yeah, I probably should have did that.
That's okay. I'm editing this podcast, so if we have to take a break, I can just edit and then ta-da.
What about you, man? What you got?
So I got this yesterday. Our buddy Armando gave it to me. He just came back from Zool, and it's called Handsome Devil from Zool. So it's not one of their sours as you would think. It's actually a New Zealand style Pilsner. Handsome Devil, not had it before, just cracked it. And I got it just yesterday, so you can't really see the can art, but it's badass, isn't it?
It is. That's a sweet looking can.
Isn't that cool?
Zool does the PB&J, right? Mixtapes. Is that Zool?
Yeah, mixtape. Yeah, he was there this past weekend for one of their releases. They had a new release on peach, and then they had a big deal, and I think they dropped all 6 or whatever variants they've got of it at once out there. So had a big to do out there for it. So cheers, Armando, for bringing this. Cheers to you guys.
And cheers to you
guys. I was
guys.
on their website the other day at Zool, and I was looking at all the ones they have because I have not been to Zool yet, but come on, a couple of months, I think in August, I'm going to be going there. I'm going to be over that way, so really looking forward to it. So, yes, cheers, fella.
Yeah, cheers.
I haven't had anything bad from Zool. I mean, they just crank out quality beer, and it's also nice to see, like, when Armando posts that stuff. It's nice to see people get excited for beer releases again.
Yeah.
Literally people camping out and lining up for hours at a time to get a damn beer.
Yep.
It's something that the industry needs in a bad way.
Yeah, that's a hot commodity, that beer. And then they were limiting like 1 4-pack per person. There were so many people coming through there just so everybody hopefully gets a chance to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Southern Grist here in Nashville, they do about once a year. They put out the peanut butter and strawberry jelly hill, and that's one of my favorites. And I always look forward to it. I'm not standing in line necessarily, but Scott will be texting me, and he lives closer to Southern Grist. I'm probably about 35, 40 minutes, and I go, okay, I got to get back down there. But there's a tap room not far from where I live too that gets it on tap. So sometimes I'll head out there during the time that they have it, which is they usually have it out about 2 or 3 months and then try to get the cans too. So you're right about that, Nick. I mean, when you get those beer releases and you get excited about it, it's like, it's like New Year's come early.
It really is. Like, it's one of those things that, you can't quite beat the feeling whenever you have something big like that. So makes me sound like an alcoholic, but what's the matter at this point?
I mean, you post about beer, you have a podcast about beer. If it smells like it, maybe it looks like it. Maybe.
I mean, I make beer.
You make beer.
I might bathe in it.
I don't think that you're an alcoholic. I think you're a beer enthusiast. But who cares about labels, right?
I mean, people always ask me if I have a drinking problem. I'm like, no, I got it all figured out.
Yeah. I know exactly what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing at this point.
But what's funny is if you drank as many beers like in just the like your Bud Lights and your domestic stuff, you might be considered an alcoholic. But if you drink as many beers in craft, right, and they're different ones, it doesn't feel the same.
No,
I'm a craft beer enthusiast at that point. That's what I am.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We're enjoying an art form.
Yes.
No offense to the Bud Light drinkers out there, but if you're drinking about 20 Bud Lights a day, you may have a problem. You may have a bit of a problem.
But if you're drinking 20 double IPAs a day, you're just an enthusiast.
That's you're an enthusiast, and you're also drunk. But that's the goal, isn't it? Sometimes.
We're creating logic today on this episode. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we really, we were said in the beginning, we were really excited to bring you guys on, and I know you all certainly just recently started a podcast, and love to know really how it all came together with you guys. I mean, you've been talking about it. I remember probably about 4 or 5 months ago being on an Instagram happy hour with you guys, and you were talking then in the beginning stages of like, we might be doing a podcast soon. And I was like, that's awesome. So it's something you guys have been talking about for a while then?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and it's something I kicked around the idea whenever I started this whole Instagram thing, and that's how me and Joe met was through the Instagram platform, and met through the beer community, and him and I we found a common interest with West Virginia sports because Joe's originally from West Virginia, and little did we know that whenever we started talking, and we kept talking and talking and talking. Next thing you know, we became best beer friends across the country, all because of a West Virginia connection here. And I remember talking whenever we would just chat before we even started doing the happy hours or anything like that, that I wanted to do a podcast. And Joe's like, if it's something you really want to do, just do it. And I'm like, all that self-doubt and all the prep work and all that stuff. Like, I always say I'm not much of a talker to start with, which I guess I'm kind of proving myself to be a liar in that aspect. But I was always kind of nervous to kind of venture out on my own and give it a shot. And one night we were talking on a happy hour, and Joe was like, I think that's going to be fun. If you want to do it, I'll do it with you. So that's where we started. And I remember talking to you guys and Scott saying that, one day you just got to hit record and go with it. And that's essentially exactly what happened.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that, like he said, it's, we started over. I'm originally from West Virginia, and I posted something like West Virginia just demolished somebody in football, and I posted it on Instagram, and then Nick's like, we started talking DM. But, the one thing that we always want to tell people is we've never met in person. It's been just over this platform that we've gotten to know each other. And we were DMing back and forth one day, and I think I asked him, I said, where do you want to go in your brewing career? Like, what's the next step that you want to do? And he goes, well, I'm thinking about a podcast. And I'm like, man, just do it. Life is too short to not do the things that you enjoy. And then we hooked up one day on like a happy hour, just him and I. We kind of met. We just kept talking and talking. And one day I'm like, hey, man, if you want to do it, I'll jump in with you. We had no clue what we were doing, but we're having a lot of fun with it, and I couldn't ask for a better partner to be on a podcast with. I freaking love this guy. So,
starting the podcast, did it feel like you needed another outlet for beer? Like, you had the social media stuff already, you're drinking it, but to kind of share with the world and to talk about it, was that like another reason for wanting the podcast to kind of, get more of that out?
Yeah, I mean, we've said it on our podcast before that even though the craft beer community is rather big, it's still like a very, very, very small notch in the world. So anytime that we can bring awareness to these breweries and the beer that they're putting out, and try to bring as many people into that community as we can, we want to do that. But at the same time, I think what really clicked in for me is doing these happy hours that we've done in the past and just sharing the amount of fun that we have on those every week. I mean, we have an absolute blast just shooting the shit for 2-3 hours a week, and being able to put that on tape and share it with everyone is something that I really wanted to do.
The very first time that I know I was on with you guys and you were talking about, maybe having a podcast, I said to Scott, I mean, after we got done, it may have been like that night or the next day, I texted him like, we got to get both of these guys on the podcast. They're great. They're well-spoken. I mean, they're fun. They would make for a great podcast episode. So, here we are today with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And we really appreciate you having us on because, Nick and I, we have no idea what we're doing. We make no qualms about that. I think in the first, like when we introduced ourselves, I said that old line from the Flash Gordon movie, I'm flying blind on a rocket cycle here. We have no idea what we're doing, but we're passionate about beer and specifically home brewing. And that's kind of, there's a lot of podcasts out there that are so technical about home brewing that most people can't even understand what they're talking about. But if you just keep it light and fun and talk about a few things and bring on other home brewers and like you guys and people that we have fun with, we just all love beer. And like you said, I think we took our Instagram platforms to the point where we just both wanted to do something more to show how much we love this brewed elixir that brings everybody together. Yeah. And that's kind of how it got started. But we wanted it to be about home brewing because that's something I'm passionate about. Nick is passionate about it. I mean, Scott, you have Yeast Infection Brew Works. You can't think of a better name for a home brewery. Let's just be honest.
Or a worse one.
Yeah, or a worse one. Exactly. It's not as bad as you think, I think, is the logo on the front of the shirt.
That's exactly what it is.
But home brewing's a passion for both of us, and we want to get the message out there and get people started. We don't care how you get into it. We don't care if you use iGulu or we don't care. Just get into it and realize how much fun it is, brewing this like third most drank beverage in the world, and have fun at it. And then you meet the community. That's how we met you guys. And it's just a great support platform. And Nick and I, we have a blast doing it. That's basically the reason why we wanted to take our platforms further and get the message out there about craft beer and especially about home brewing.
Well, I can tell you this. I don't homebrew, but I have learned a lot from when we started this podcast. And even before we started this podcast, I would be over at Scott's house when he's brewing beer. And, I've had, his beer, Yeast Infection Brew Works, by the way. And, learned from him that's helped me during this podcast. And then over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've been listening to you guys. And as I said in the beginning, it's not a show just about nothing. I know that's a play on words and it's fun and all that. And I think it's fantastic. But no, you guys do a really, really great job of, as both home brewers, breaking it down in the simple terms of everything. And I think it's great. I think it's relatable. I think it's conversational. And it's really helped me just over time. I mean, I've drank craft beer for years, but if you're not a home brewer, sometimes you're going, okay, maybe I need to start thinking more about when I'm drinking beer, the DNA of a beer, what's in it gives me a better understanding. And we'll get probably more into this podcast. We'll get more into IPAs and stuff like that, because I know Scott wants to talk a little bit more about something a little later on.
Well, if you talk to head breweries like that are pro brewers, most of them have started as home brewers anyway. So even if you're talking to them, you've got war stories you can share, right? You got parallels and things that you've all experienced in home brewing, good or bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so much trial and error. And
yeah.
I think that's probably what you're going to come across most people that you ask whenever they first initially get into it. And it's both an art and a science. I know that's an argument sometimes that comes up, but I think it's a little bit of both. But it's also one of those things that home brewing is as easy as you want it to be or as difficult as you want it to be. Yeah. And, if it's something that you really want to try, just do it. Start off simple. Don't get in over your head. Do a little one gallon batch or something like that, and get your feet wet. Because if you jump in head first, it can be a little complex and it can just drive you out of it.
And that's the one thing that we love about home brewing now is like it's evolved with technology. You got the Piner system now, the iGulu, so you don't need to go out and buy like buckets and plastic, a stainless steel pot to boil on. You don't need a glycol chiller. You can brew on your kitchen counter. And if that gets you into home brewing, Nick and I have done our job and we're thrilled, and go on your journey. And that's why one of the questions we always ask the home brewers that we have on, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get into home brewing? Because like Nick said, it can be daunting if you first get into it. We all know, like the first time we brewed, it's like, Jesus Christ, this is a lot.
Yeah.
But then the more you get into it, you love the sanitizing and the cleaning, and you love standing there waiting for it to boil. Then you throw your hop additions in, and then you cool the thing down and put it in your fermenter, and you get up every morning to look at your little airlock. Oh my God, it's bubbling. This is awesome.
It's working.
And that's the greatest feeling for anyone who home brews, is getting up and going in there and like, right on, this thing is bubbling. And you want to call your wife, like, not that she cares, but she's like, babe, check this out.
I know. And I did this the other day because I brewed over the weekend, and like that first, I don't know, 15 to 18 hours, something could happen, but something doesn't, right? And I went to bed and I was like, shit, nothing's happened yet. So I get up the next morning and I was like, that was like kind of the 24 hours, like, okay, now it's starting to click. You just got to be patient. It'll get there.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Brewing, it's like, it's not like a commercial brewery where you can control the temperature perfectly and throw your yeast in and have it start fermenting within an hour or two. Home brewing's different. That first 18 to 24 hours, you're praying to God this thing's going to work. And then you get up the next morning and it's like Ralphie on Christmas Day. It finally came. Yep. Check it out. The airlock is bubbling. And you're like, Yes, I am making beer.
Yes, it is working. The process is working.
It is working, exactly.
One of your guests, and forgive me, I don't recall who it was, but you'd asked them kind of what advice would you give them. They said get a mentor, and I think it was great advice because just as you talked about, when you first get into it, it can be daunting, and I remember getting to daunting is in what the hell do I need equipment wise? You could probably go out and spend a whole bunch of money on shit you don't need. But you can keep it simple too at the same time, and you don't need all these extravagant things to start making beer. And I thought that was good advice from one of your guests.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing because usually whenever I brew, it's become a solo project now sometimes. But my friend Aaron always brewed with me from the beginning, so it's always good to have an extra hand, someone to bounce ideas off of, and just kind of boost your confidence level a little bit, especially when you first start because it's something different that you're not used to doing. It's similar to cooking a meal or something like that. You just follow a recipe and that's about it. But also whenever there's some terminology there that you're not used to or some equipment that you're not used to, it's nice to having someone there that can just kind of hold your hand through it and answer some questions along the way or kind of just give you some reassurance that, you're not going to mess this up.
Somebody's probably experienced something already. Maybe you hadn't yet. You're like, oh yeah, don't worry about that. That's fine. Or that's what to be expected. Or you fucked up. Yep, you fucked up.
Yeah. But it's also like if you do fuck up, like embrace it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the end, you're gonna have beer, and whether it's not good, whether it's good, you learn from that process. Yeah. So each little thing that you go through, it's all a learning opportunity, and you're like, all right, now I know what not to do, on the next batch.
Yeah. And probably a question for the both of you, because we've had a lot of brewery owners on. Whenever we get somebody that brews beer, and we've had so many great ones on. When we had Founders on not long ago, and we had the head brewer up there, and he was fantastic. But I'm like, after all these years, where do your ideas come from? And then, and that was a question for him, but even for both of you, and Scott, I know where a lot of ideas come from, but even for the both of you, you're sitting at home, or you're out someplace, and you all of a sudden you have this idea, and you're going, this is the kind of beer I want to make this week, or maybe today. Is that the planning stuff for you guys, or how does it work?
I think for the most part, when we first got into it, we were just doing the one all kits, the one that, you order a kit, it comes with the malt and the, like a pound or two, especially malts, and then you got the extract and all of that. But over the years, it's gotten to the point where if I go out and I like a beer that a brewery has, I'm like, I'm going to figure out a way to do this. But, and again, Nick's dad calls me the old feller. I've been home brewing since 2007. And I'm not an expert at it in any way. I'm just something I'm really passionate about. So what I did, I delved into it to where I read so many books on hops and malts and profiles of different beers. And I think a wife or my daughter got me a book with a bunch of clone recipes in it, that it's commercial beer, but it breaks it down to your level of home brewing that you can make that beer. Mm-hmm. Like I did a Rogue Dead Guy Ale that you couldn't tell the difference between what I brewed and the real thing because it was the same recipe. But, Founders, and I think, I listened to that episode, and I think it was one of the brewers that says, they have so many core beers that they really can't think outside the box and come up with new stuff. Like they got to keep the stuff all year long, and they'd have to plan out 2 or 3 years to come up with a new beer.
Yeah.
And that's something Nick and I have always talked about. Like home brewers, I can open my kitchen cabinet and go, oh, I got a bottle of agave. Well, I'm going to make an agave wheat beer. I'm just going to do it. It's just, that's what it is. We're not locked into like having to answer to someone about we brew beer for us that we like. And that, like I said, we go out somewhere and I'm like, I see like white chocolate and I'm like, oh, I can make a beer with that. And that's basically how it comes up. Most of my beers are just, I either think about them or I open the cabinet. I'm going, oh, I've got a 1 pound thing of coconut. I'm going to make a coconut brown ale. That's kind of how I come up with my stuff.
Well, and Founders, I'll tell you, you mentioned them, and that's a different breed, obviously, because of who they are. And
right.
If people we talked about that, I asked them, I said, I remember the first Founders beer that I had was the Founders Day All Day IPA. Mm-hmm. And where that's gone and where that's taken off, but it's the demand and the expectation level. That's why they've gotten so big, but they have to keep that cycle going. Otherwise, there goes your business right there. So obviously there is a big difference between, what they're doing and what a home brewer is doing, but you guys are still getting there. You're still drinking some great beer.
Yeah. And I'm with Joe. I'm kind of the same way. It's kind of nice having the flexibility to do what you want to do with it. But I think a lot of my inspiration comes from, just using the resources that you have around you. And I think online resources are vastly underrated for anyone who doesn't have access to a homebrew club or something locally that you can bounce ideas off of. So for example, if you're a member of the Homebrewer Association, they have a whole forum you can get online and chat with. You have archives to their magazines from years and years and years, and they have a whole list of recipes and clones and stuff like that you can follow. So, I mean, if there's anyone out there listening who's looking to get into that, I would definitely start on the online route as well through either the Homebrew Association or somewhere like Brew Your Own Magazine. They have a bunch of articles and recipes and articles and stuff that you can read on there as well.
And for stuff that you make, even though it's not willy-nilly, but you're finding stuff, you still want to drink it at the end of the day, right? You want to make something that you want to drink and maybe share with people too. So, you want something palatable, and you guys have enough knowledge to be like, okay, I can take these ingredients and make something I think will be good in some kind of style.
Well, yeah. What it is, I think the more you get into this, it's not even a hobby anymore. It's a passion for me. It's like literally, if I could just stay home and brew all day, I would do it. But I don't think the wife would let me do that. But what it is, the more you get into it, and this is where Nick and I, we've kind of, we've done a podcast episode just about hops, the Holy Trinity, because we've learned over the years, once you get into it, you learn about the different hops and the different malts, and you can sit there and go, well, I want to make this type of beer. And once you get to the point where you're knowledgeable about most of the ingredients, if you want to make a Pilsner, you're going to know what malt to use and what hops to use. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to throw a bunch of stuff in a pot, get it boiling, and just go on with it. I mean, We're not solving the world's problems. We're making beer.
Right.
And, Charlie Papazian, greatest phrase ever in our home brewing community is RDWHAHB. Relax, don't worry, have a homebrew. At the end of the day, you're making beer, right? Just enjoy it, embrace it, and in a week or two, you're going to crack open a bottle, or you're going to open a tap, and that's going to pour into a glass, and you're going to be like, I freaking made that. And it's going to be one of the greatest things ever, or you're going to be like, oh, I might want to tweak that next time.
Those are the ones you don't share so much.
No, not so much. This one's just for me right now.
I get friends like, oh, you making this thing? I go, yeah. Can I try it? To be determined. It's got to pass my quality control,
Right.
So what's it called? It's PBD IPA. I'm not sure yet.
I couldn't tell you how many times that my wife gets on me because I make a beer, put it on tap, and I don't have a name for it. And all of our tap handles are like chalkboard handles, so you can write it in, and it drives her nuts if I don't have something written on that handle. Where she writes it, she has better handwriting than I do, but it'll sit there for 2 months without a name.
With nothing? Like not even a style? Like this is a Kolsch or anything like that?
I mean, I know what it is. I just don't write it on there.
He just calls it beer.
This is
craft beer.
One.
Yeah.
Beer one, beer
yeah,
two.
Beer one.
TB.
Right. Like I know what it is, and that's all that matters.
She's like,
so Joe,
what beer is this? Yeah. Well, you can just tell by color, right? Like, oh, that's the porter. Okay, I don't know.
As soon as it pours, you're like, that one.
That one.
So Joe, not only do you brew beer, but you work at a brewery. So you're around beer all the time.
Yeah, I was lucky enough June of last year to land a job with Waikiki Brewing Company, and I've been a big fan of them when they first opened in 2015, and I had a weekly pilgrimage down there every Thursday, and I went to their anniversary parties. And Joe Lorenzen, one of the original guys that opened the brewery, told me, he goes, one day we're going to get you to come work for us. Well, fast forward 10 years later or 9 years later, I got hired to work for him, but actually run their tap house on the west side of the island. So we have all Waikiki Brewing beer on tap. We have a couple local. We bring in like Hanakoa. We keep it all island-inspired beer. And yeah, I was lucky enough to land a job in the industry, and yeah, I love it.
I know it's a job, but still, it's got to be like a fun job, right? It's not digging ditches, right? It's like you're in something that you love to do. Do you feel like that?
I think I said it when we had the guy on from Irie Beer Company. It's like any other job. You have your good days and your bad days. It's not always the greatest job in the world, and that's the thing. Sometimes when you take what you love and you make it your job, it sometimes doesn't feel like a job anymore. But I can honestly say I get to get up and go to work every day, and it's beer. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's beer, and I get to, as someone who come in and they go, I don't like beer. I'm like, no, you just haven't had the right one. And I've got 8 taps that I can play with and let them try everything, or guest beers in cans or whatever. And so, yeah, it's like any other job, good days, bad days.
So, Joe, do you ever do any arm twisting since you homebrew and say, hey, maybe here at Waikiki you can try my beer? maybe get it on tap.
I went down to what we call our OG location. It was the first Waikiki Brewing location that opened a couple weeks ago, and brewed with the head brewer, and one of the other guys had a blast of a day just brewing all day. And we talked a little bit about that, and I do like an L's for ALS double IPA every year and donate money. I'm big into it. I believe in it. It's a great thing. But I'm kind of in talks with them. They've asked me, can we have your L's for ALS double IPA? We'd like to brew it. So we're in the process of figuring out, tweaking it a little bit and see if we can make it come to. But that's the first time within almost the year I've been working with it, they've come to me and said, hey, we've noticed you've done this 2 years in a row. Would you be interested in kind of like doing this with us? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
would
awesome.
that be considered like Would that be considered like a collab with them, or how would that work? Would it just be their beer, or? Well,
no, it's my recipe, and so it would be one of those kind of like weird things. It's like Waikiki Brewing in collaboration with the Rock and JY home brewery or whatever you want to call it. It's still my recipe, but they'd have to tweak it to a big 7-barrel system, and that can easily be done. But they've kind of noticed the past 2 years when I've been posting about it and all that. And it's like, it's something good. And I think last year there was only me and one other brewery in the whole state of Hawaii that did it. I wish more people would get on board with it because it's a great organization.
Well, you guys have done 9 episodes. Does it feel like 9? You guys are racking them up.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely come along quicker than we thought. And I think we caught on quicker too than we thought we would. It's still a learning process and everything, but we've definitely gotten the hang of it. We've kind of gotten the camaraderie and the questions and everything down a little bit. Sometimes we get a little robotic, and we've talked about that. So that's something that we're going to work on trying to make the conversation flow a little bit better from episode to episode. But it definitely doesn't feel like we've been at this for almost 3 months now. I mean, it still feels like we're still starting up and still throwing around ideas. And each episode we end up with 5-10 more ideas, and
yes,
we could go this way, we can go this way, we can talk to this person and this person and this person, and next thing you know, you got a list of 50 things that you want to try to do, or people you want to get on, and you're like, well, shit, where do we go now?
Just yesterday and today, Scott and I were texting back and forth for probably at least 50 different text messages yesterday and today about ideas that we have from previous episodes, and let's take it in this direction, or let's down the road, let's talk to these people or that people. And so I get it, but it's funny, don't be too hard on yourself, because I'll tell you, in the beginning, and when Scott and I started doing the podcast, I was maybe a little robotic, because back in the day, I've been out of it for a long time, but back in the day I used to work in radio news or whatever, so I had this news background. And we get people on. I'm like, I'm going to do this interview, and I haven't done it. I work in healthcare now, but it's kind of like, it's like you still get out on that bicycle and you're riding it. And so we'd get people on, and I'm like asking these questions like, tell me your statistics of how many, and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, so I don't really do that anymore, and if there's like specific questions that I may have beforehand, I go, I'm going to ask them beforehand if maybe they know, and if they want to tell us, that's fine. But now it's just all like, let's just keep it light and have fun. We don't want to get too serious. So I think sometimes in the beginning, I was finding my pathway of not being like this serious guy. We're talking beer, So
he used to at the 50-minute mark. At the 50-minute mark, I could feel his stare coming through. Like I wind it down, and I even said in a couple episodes, I could see Steve looking at me like he's wanting to wind this thing
down.
It's
like he was waiting for the commercial break.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too. It was like I did, I was a producer at one time too, so it's kind of like okay, we got 2 minutes left or whatever, and it's like this is a podcast, so you live and learn, but. We've evolved, and I don't worry about that kind of stuff.
You guys have said it too. There are no rules, right? They're kind of just the rules you want to make. It's your thing. You adapt it the way you guys want to.
Yeah, well, and that's the fun part of it, right? Is you're not held to a standard, or you're not censored over anything, or you're in total control of what you talk about, who you talk to, and what you say, and it definitely makes it much easier to be able to operate within those realms, knowing that you don't really have a boundary.
And and that's the thing, we have this vision for the podcast that we don't want it to be ever seem like a job. We both work full-time jobs like you guys do. This is a side project among the other things that we have going on, like on, brewing at home and all that. But Nick and I, we have this thing, and we just want to keep it fun and lighthearted. And we said at the very beginning with our introductory episode that if you're coming here for serious conversation or whatever, don't waste your time. This is not what this is about.
Right.
And we want to keep it that way. And like I said, neither one of us have any background in this whatsoever at all. We're learning as we go, but we're having a lot of fun doing it. And I love getting on with him and doing the podcast and the random stupid questions and the giraffe facts and the third nipple facts that everybody seems to hold on to. But that's the one thing. We don't ever want to get to the point where we wake up one day and I'm like, I don't want to get on with Nick. I don't want to get to that point where that's what it turns into. I look forward to recording with this guy and getting on with him with the happy hours and you guys and just talking about beer. And at the end of the day, our podcast, your guys, mine, like everybody else in the industry, it's about beer. Remember that, right? Yep. We're not saving the world. We're talking about beer.
And I'll tell you, it is great. You guys mentioned having great partners. I've got a great one too. And it is so cool just to be able to, we share editing and ideas and things. And it's a 1 week he puts an episode out. Next week I put one, whatever that thing is. And it's like, I'm like, I don't put one out this week. Whew, okay, good. I literally woke up over the weekend. I go, fuck, am I supposed to be doing something this week? But it was, he was already, we have a list and we know, but it was like, okay, well, Steve's got this one, so it's a great thing where you're not having to do it every single time and you can bounce stuff off each other. It's just great having a great partner.
Well, in the beginning, because we basically put out an episode every week. And in the beginning, it was just me that was editing. And, I have an editing background and Scott didn't. And so for like the first 3 or 4 months, I was doing all the editing. And finally one day I said, I think you're going to have to learn how to edit, man, if we're going to do this every week.
Yeah, but he didn't follow my advice. I said, just throw it up there.
He's like, just throw it up there. I'm like, no.
Hey, no, you just take the advice you gave us, hit record and post it.
Let her run, baby.
The only difference now, and this is really funny. So when we created all our accounts and all that, and it was on the Instagram, especially he created the Brewery Underground Podcast Instagram account. And it was probably about a week or two afterwards, and I didn't even know. I'm like, we have one? Okay, I didn't know. And then I would get on there, but then sometimes when people were like messaging us, Scott would message them, and then I would message them, but they didn't know who they were talking to. So I finally got to the point I was like, you know what? Just Scott, you take over. Everybody, if I need to get on there or whatever and comment, I will. Otherwise, I'll use my personal account. Yeah. That way people aren't confused because they're like, who the heck am I talking to anyway? So
that's fun. I do like fucking with people that way. It's like, I can fuck with someone this way,
Is it Steve? Is it Scott? Who are they?
That's awesome. What's something, as you guys have been doing the podcast, what's something that's unexpected that's come along, whether it's been in research or technical or anything that you guys have discovered since doing the podcast?
We've never really had any technical issues per se. Knock on wood. We're still early enough in that we haven't had to fool with that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything's shockingly gone as planned for the most part. We've had a had a last minute cancellation recently that kind of threw us off our game a little bit. That was probably the biggest hurdle that we've had, and didn't really have time to play catch up for that week. But for the most part, I mean, I think we've both been pleasantly surprised at the reception of the podcast. It seems like more people than we ever thought would tune in are listening, and the fact that people want to take the time to listen to two bums from opposite ends of the country talk about beer through a microphone over the internet, it kind of blows your mind.
Well, I think for me, the one thing that really surprised me was that when, Nick and I first started doing this, and I always tell Nick that he's Johnny Carson, I'm Ed McMahon. He's the host, I'm the fat guy on the end of the couch, right? Because it was his idea, and I wanted to get into it with him. But now it's really become this thing to where we're both kind of invested in it, right? We are the Hop In, We're Drinking podcast. And the one thing that's kind of blown me away is when we first came up with this, I reached out to I don't know how many people on Instagram, home brewers, beer enthusiasts. I hate the term beer influencer. I don't like that concept. You're a beer enthusiast. Absolutely. They didn't know us at all, like other than through our Insta. But everybody enthusiastically was like, hell yeah, we want to get on with you guys. That was the most surprising thing with me. Nobody was like, who the hell are you to be asking me to be on some ridiculous? Yeah. Everybody was so enthusiastic. So to me, that was the most surprising thing of how many people were just like immediately, yes, get us scheduled. That shocked me, to be honest about it.
Joe, you just gave me goosebumps because I remember reaching out to our very first guest, which was our second episode, kind of like you guys. And they said, and we told him, you're the first guest. And they said yes anyway. Like, who wants to be the first one? You guys haven't done one yet. Like, what the hell? But I still reflect on it. It's still mind blowing. And I still, to this day, we got a yes yesterday. It still blows my mind when people keep saying yes. And it's like, it's the best feeling. You ask them one time. It's like, they don't ask a million questions. It says, what are you about? It's like, sure. We give a little background of who we are, and like, yes. And it's like, oh, shit, okay. Yeah. Steve, we got another one.
Yeah.
And they just
that is literally Nick and I right there. I text him like, hey, this person's on. He's like, right on. Every time I get somebody booked, I'm like, dude, check it out. They said yes.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And it just keeps coming. Like, we're to the point we're booked almost all the way through April.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something that we thought that we were going to be like pulling straws to try to get someone week to week. And next thing you know, we're scheduling 4 or 6 weeks out. And I'm sure you guys are the same way at this point. But, it's crazy, the amount of reception that it gets over such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think in some aspects, aren't we kind of booked almost to a degree, almost to the end of June?
We're into June.
You don't have to brag.
This. Yeah, but we cheat a little bit. We love two-parters. Yeah. This will be a two-parter, I'm sure. But what that does is it gets them stacked up. Like, we got a lot of guests still, but it stacks them up, right? We can go on vacation for 2 weeks or something. We still got stuff that can fill in. So we got a lot. So we like that. It's a bit of a cheat.
That's right. Yeah. You want to hear more from Joe and Nick? You're going to have to wait till part 2 comes up.
That's right.
Hey, there's something I want to talk to you about, you guys, and it's an IPA conversation. And Scott knows, I think, where we're going with this today.
And this is great because you got 2 hop heads right here in front of us.
Yeah, and I pee a lot.
Yeah, I know. Same here. So one of your episodes.
It burns when IPA.
It burns when IPA. I was about to say that.
Funny. I know both of you guys love IPAs, and I've gotten into IPAs a lot more over the past year or so. But there's one that I'm trying to get into more. I'm starting to like a lot more. I'm not completely there yet, but I'm almost there. And Joe, you could appreciate this. It's the West Coast IPA style. And I heard you on a podcast say something like, some people describe it as cat piss. Have I got that right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Elaborate,
so what
sir.
It is it's so West Coast IPAs are so dank and piney. And if you're new to the West Coast IPA style, I don't think you're ready for what type of IPA that is. It's not your hazy, it's not your juicy, it's not your double dry. This is just a straight West Coast IPA brewed with dank hops. And when people first smell them or try them, the first thing that people think about is it smells like cat piss. And if you have cats, we all know what that smells like. It's not that. but it's got that kind of like really strong, piney, just overwhelming, dank, hop flavor. But that's the main characteristic of a West Coast IPA. That's what you want out of a beer like that. It should be clear, not quite like a pill. You should be able to see through it, just just see right through it. But man, it's like when it pours out of a tap, and I'll use my wife as a reference. When I crack open a West Coast IPA, her face immediately goes, ooh, because she can smell it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but that's my favorite style of beer. Nick, I'll turn it over to you. You and I are both hopheads, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, IPAs for days. So, and it doesn't matter the kind. Like I'm big into hazies right now. I'm big on the haze train. But any type of IPA, whether it be just a classic American IPA, West Coast, hazy, session, any of them's like right down my alley, and they all have different characteristics, right? Like Joe said, your West Coast is going to be your typical bitter piney bomb. You're going to get that clean, crisp taste and finish of a Pilsner, but you're going to get that strong hot bite of an IPA. And then you get into the opposite side where you get your hazies, to where you're going to get a little bit of a hot bite sometimes, but you really get those tropical citrus fruity notes that is a little bit more appealing to, the typical craft beer crowd, because I haven't met a craft beer fanatic that jumped straight into an IPA and loved it. So hazies is except for that guy, but hazy beers have been, a big transition beer for a lot of people that weren't into that whole IPA thing. So in a way, as many people hate it, there's a lot of haters of hazy IPAs, and whether they're an actual beer or what have you, but they've gone a long way of getting more people involved in it. So yeah, IPAs are definitely my favorite, but at the same time, I enjoy a little bit of everything. I just as equally enjoy a barrel aged stout, or a nice clean lager, or even the occasional fruited smoothie sour, but I don't call it beer. I call it fruited seltzers, but that's another conversation for another day. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a Swiss Army knife of beer loving.
I am too. But what you described is exactly where I think Steve is right now. Kind of that transition from hazy IPAs, who he loves, and transition to that West Coast, and not trying to likes them, but now trying to expand on that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's been an interesting transition as far as like IPAs, because I've never been anti-IPA at all. I mean, in how many years I've been drinking craft beer or whatever. But I would say that when I would get I would say the starting the podcast actually has gotten me more on the IPA train. Before we started this podcast, I was out there, I was drinking all kinds of different beer styles. But if I were to go into a brewery, a lot of times I wasn't going for the IPAs. If I was purchasing beer, I wasn't purchasing too many IPAs. And again, I wasn't anti-IPA. It would just I'm doing other things, and you get into like the repetition. So all of a sudden I started drinking some IPAs, and I'm like, okay, can I like these? And I remember one of the very first podcasts that Scott and I did. We did it with a guy, and we had gone to he was the brewer at this brewery in Nashville, and we had gone there first, and then we got the guy on, and they were talking about this particular IPA that they both loved. And I'm listening to the conversation because I had it too, and I'm like, I really wish I could appreciate that IPA more that they are appreciating. So I'm just gonna have to drink more. I'm gonna have to get into them more. And so over time, as he said, the New England, the hazies, I've gotten into the West Coast, Joe. I'm starting to get there. I would say I'm about 65 to 70% there on liking West Coast IPAs. But some of the characteristics that you were talking about on one of your podcasts, I started laughing. I've never thought it tasted like cat piss. I wouldn't go back to it. But I started listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the way it is. But I had, and I was going, we'll talk about the Untapped app in a few minutes, but I was going on my Untapped app the other night, and I would look, and I'm like, okay, I checked in some West Coast IPAs in 2024. 3.75 on Untapped is like, my line of like, if I'm checking in at that, then they're good. I'm going to drink them again. I haven't gotten into that mark of like, even if it wasn't on Untapped, even if I was rating a beer from 1 to 5, I haven't reached that threshold as of yet of rating a West Coast IPA on like a 4 level, a 4.50, or a 5. But I feel like I'm getting there.
So when you first drank your first West Coast IPA,
yeah,
what was your reaction to it? Like, do you remember the first one you had?
Scott and I actually were talking about that earlier before we even started this podcast. I'm trying to think. It's probably been at least 5 or 6 years. It's probably been beyond that. But the ones that I can remember was about 5 or 6 years ago. I was at a brewery in Cincinnati called Third Eye, and they won awards for their West Coast IPAs at, like, beer festivals and stuff. And I went in there, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try it. And I had it, and I went, I can't imagine what the big deal is about this. But here's the key of that, and we'll talk more about this, when we talk about the Untapped app in a few minutes. Am I shitting on it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because it just wasn't my style. Doesn't mean it's a bad beer. It just wasn't my style of beer. But Scott and I have talked about this a few times on our own podcast, and I like these conversations. I like to revisit, and I'm going to go back to that brewery and revisit the beer that I had maybe 5 years ago and see what I would rank it today. And I'll bet you I would like it even more now.
Your palate probably is evolving too at the same time. Not only just your mind, but your palate's probably changing too. Like, I would say, I think, Joe, you alluded to this earlier, like, hey, you haven't found the beer yet. Oh, I don't like IPAs. Maybe you haven't found that beer that happened to me that bridges that gap. Like, oh, no. Oh, I like that one. Now let me explore this thing now further.
Yeah, because what happened is I think we all four of us, we started out drinking the macro beers. That's how, what our dad was drinking. I think Dave said it last week on the podcast with us, what your dad was drinking. Like, my dad was drinking PBR and Olympia, so that was my entry into it.
That's what you had. What you had.
And then, I had a Sierra Nevada, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Great beer. And then what got me on West Coast IPAs when I was stationed in Puerto Rico when I was in the military, there's a brewery there called Old Harbor Brewery, and they're still open now. It's the oldest brewery on Puerto Rico. And the brewmaster there was a German-trained brewmaster named Wolfgang Lindell. And Wolf and I got to be really good friends. So Yvette and I went down to the brewery one day, and he put this beer in front of me. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, just drink it. I took 2 drinks out of that. And if you guys have ever seen the movie Beer Fest, it was one of those where I looked up at the light and held the beer, and I'm like, this is beautiful. It was a West Coast IPA. And awesome. I have never looked back since. I didn't have this taste like cat piss. I didn't have this, oh my God, it was literally like, oh, I found my beer. And that's what got me into it. But it took, this guy's become a real good friend of mine, and he works for EC Dolls over in Sweden now as their director of brewing operations. We still talk on DM all the time on Instagram. We're really good friends. This guy was my biggest inspiration for home brewing and getting into beer. And I took him like a blonde ale that I brewed the first one. And he's like, this is amazing. I'm like, don't mess with me, dude. It's fucking horrible. He's like, no, this is really good. He let me come down and brew with him one day. He became a really good friend. But had he not put that glass in front of me, I wouldn't be in love with West Coast IPAs. The dank, the piney, the resinous, what I like to call getting thrown down and assaulted with hops. You can't put enough hops in a beer for me. But what I understand, not everyone is going to like that style. But for someone to say, I don't like beer, it's not that you don't like beer. You haven't found the style that you like. So don't say you don't like beer.
Yeah.
I don't care if you grab a Miller Lite or a Bud Light. Just drink something that you like. I don't care what it is. But don't say you don't like beer.
Right. And Joe, following up on that too, one of the things that when you were describing why people may not like West Coast IPAs on your podcast episode that I heard was you were talking about the bitter taste, the bitterness of it. And I think that's been probably the biggest standout for me. And I'm like, yeah, this one maybe is just a little bit too bitter for me. But again, I'm getting there. I feel like I'm going to reach that threshold. So, talking about that, last summer, I did this summer tour, and it was called the Summer Tour of Ciders and Seltzers, because the reason I did that was we were talking all
because
these
I
brewery
wouldn't.
owners. Yeah, because Scott wouldn't. I took one. I took the sword. Yeah, Scott wasn't gonna do it. I was gonna do it. I'm like, I'll do it. You can appreciate this, Joe, I would think, working at a brewery. We were talking to all these brewery owners, and they were talking about, how much things have changed in the craft beer business, that people are also liking seltzers and ciders. Well, I got to tell you, my introduction to seltzers and ciders was like very small. Maybe I had like one seltzer in my life. I had a couple ciders. So I just went, you know what? I'm gonna take one for the Brewery Underground podcast, and I'm gonna take the summer, and I'm gonna try some of these. And there's an episode out there. People want to listen to that. But this summer, my tour is going to be West Coast IPAs. I'm gonna seek them out. And I'm going for that 4 mark, and I'm going for that 5 mark, baby. That's what I want to do on my summer tour, West Coast IPAs. And when the summer ends, I'll report back.
Steve is on the hunt for the ultimate liquid pine cone.
Yeah. I'm putting him on a boat for 3 months, and he's going to make notes, and he's going to come back, and he's going to report back.
All right.
The ultimate glass of cat piss. I can't wait to hear about it.
Oh, yes.
There's your episode name for the fall.
There you go.
Sounds like
okay, but we already have an
beer
episode
too.
for the fall. We'll have to bring you guys back on. So.
Yeah.
The cat pissier, the better.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It sounds like a good yeast infection beer.
There you go. Make note of that.
What's
Steve.
funny is that there's that brewery on Instagram, Salt and Oak. They're just like an AI brewery. I have a T-shirt that I bought from them that's got a picture of a pissed off cat on it, and it's Cat Piss Double IPA.
Oh, I can appreciate that. That is
I
good.
couldn't pass it up.
That
Yeah.
is good.
That's great.
Yeah.
A drafty beer beats the night.